Welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be taking a closer look at the Smith & Wesson M&P 40. It is a used firearm. Got it in the shop this week. Customers want to get a Beretta and get away from the Smith & Wesson, so we're helping him do that. One of the things we do with used firearms is we like to test them and make sure they work. So that's what we're doing out here today. We're just going to test this, make sure it works, and take a little closer look at it. You see what it came with. It's got 2 mags, 15 round mags, some change outs, and there you go. But let's get the range set up and get some downrange. Alright, so we just wrapped up at the range. Put about 20 rounds down range, did about 10 in each mag, a couple mags. Had the target pop off a tree on the first shot. We'll fix that up so that it don't happen again. So that was a little problem there. That was about it. My overall feelings on the semi-automatic from Smith & Wesson still really hasn't changed much. This one didn't convert me, I'll say. If I'm gonna get a Smith & Wesson, it will be a revolver. I'm just not a big fan of their semi-automatic pistols. All right, my main problem is this trigger right here. It is squishy. The guy said that he had about 400 rounds through it. Okay, I'll believe him at that, but the trigger is squishy. I don't like it. I haven't actually ever handled a semi-automatic from Smith & Wesson that I do like the trigger on. So that's always a gripe of mine. Other than that, I don't like how it feels in my hand. Just not very comforting for me, not very comfortable with it. And the quality to me seems a little bit lacking coming from Smith & Wesson the past couple of years. So I'm just overall not really a big fan of this one. It is chambered in .40 caliber, so let's end on a good note. It's a great round. If you're going to get a pistol semi-automatic from Smith & Wesson, get it in .40 caliber, so at least you're popping off a good round, right? But yeah, I'm probably a little too biased for this. We'll take it on back to the shop. We'll let the gunsmith take a look at it. I'm sure Ricky's more of a fan of Smith & Wesson semi-automatics than I am, so he won't have as much bias against these pistols as I do. So we'll go ahead and let him wrap this up. All right.
Hey y'all, welcome to Maverick Gun Works. Now we're going to talk about an M&P from Smith & Wesson. This one we have today is in .40 caliber, and it is made in USA. All right. Right here we have Springfield, Massachusetts, USA. Here we have a copy of that handgun. This is the full-size frame in .40 caliber. And give us a quick overview of this. We're going to make sure we take our magazine out first, which, by the way, we have a 15-round magazine on this. And the mag release button is also able to make it either right or left-hand side for for different right or left-hand shooters. Alrighty. And here we have also this one. The frame of the gun has a Picatinny rail built into the front of it. Forward of your trigger guard gives you an option on some lighting or laser situations there. All right, and our typical safety trigger on this gun has a safety device built into the trigger. You have to pull the bottom of the trigger down before the trigger will come back. And in this particular model, we also have the safety feature of a magazine lockout without the magazine in the gun will not fire. And before we do that, we're going to pull it back and confirm there is nothing in the chamber. All right. And now we try that again. We have the gun has been cocked, and it will not, trigger will not release the striker until we put our magazine in the gun. And now you hear this, and there we have our firing position. Okay. So that being said, now we've got it fired. Let's go ahead and take the slide off of it and take a look at what it takes to field strip this gun. Okay, we're going to pull our slide back, lock it into the open position, pull our takedown button down, this lever, okay, and it always fits into the machined out notch on your slide, so you can rotate the lever down, and we pull it forward. And in this particular gun, you have to fire the gun before the slide will come off the front. So here we have to have the magazine in the gun. Alrighty, and we're going to release the trigger. Now we have to take the magazine out to be able to pull the slide forward. So there's your procedure for that one. All right, and here we go with our typical removing the barrel on here. We compress our spring and guide rod assembly, take it off the barrel, push the barrel up, and pull it right out of the slide. See? Here we go. And we typically would do a solvent patch through the rifling of the barrel, let it soak for a few minutes, come back with possibly a brass brush to clean out the carbon and the copper buildup, and do the same thing with our slide. In that we would clean out the tracks, the surfaces, slide surfaces on our bolt, the head of the bolt here. Make sure we get all the carbon and possibly brass buildup off of the face of the bolt. And we'll come back with a clean patch to clean off all the residue, and follow it up with a light film of lubricant. And here again, I personally prefer a synthetic lubricant so that you're not as concerned about a cold weather situation, where I know a lot of times in the wintertime, especially, the firearms have a difficulty cycling because a typical petroleum product would be stiffer and not let the trigger mechanism, for example, work freely if it's very bad cold weather outside. And here we have our opening in the frame for our M&P. We're going to follow this up with a little solvent here to make sure we clean out the carbon and dirt residue from inside our trigger group, and clean that off with some dry patches and a couple of drops of lightweight lubricant also on the surfaces that would be of friction concern. And with that said, we're going to reattach our slide, making sure we engage the tracks. We have a track on this gun here in the center, right above your trigger, and also on the tail end of the frame. And we're going to come right on here and engage those, slides back forward. All right, we'll pull this back, and our locking latch falls back into place. Now the gun is ready to perform its duties. Okay. And while we've had it here, let's go ahead and do our trigger pull test, see what we have. Now, this is a factory stock gun. There's not been anything modified on it whatsoever. And we can definitely tell that, being the case. It's 5 1/4 pounds or so for our trigger pull. And I can tell you that the feeling of the trigger on this gun, we'll go ahead and rack it again. I'm going to feel it with my finger here, pulling that trigger. You got a fairly long pull. We'll watch this as I pull back, and right before it starts to break and release the sear, it kind of hits a wall. That's what I would call it. It's fairly stiff feeling. And then to reset the trigger, let's see what that does when we reset it. Holding the trigger, rack the slide. We're going to let it go forward again. And has to travel pretty good ways before the trigger resets. And that's typical. It is a factory trigger on this gun. There are other aftermarket components that can be changed out and things to make it smoother and much shorter reset on it, but that could be for another day. Anyway, that's our take on the Smith & Wesson M&P, and I hope you enjoyed that. If it's something that you'd like to have us take a look at, give us a note at maverickgunworks.com.